Today, what I shall show you how I constructed is this. A blockswapper, but here's the cool part, it's got an incy wincy footprint. It can probably be much smaller, but that's my efforts. So first step, of course, the layout. We have a simple lever here, clicky lever. Is what we want. So the sequence we need to do this is to retract the lock, push in the crafting table, and stick it up. That's pretty simple for activation, that is. And then when we turn it off, what we do is we start with the same move. Then instead of doing that piston, we do this piston, and we also end with the same move. So essentially the only difference between the two of them is which piston we're pulling. So, how have I done this? My first implementation was this monstrosity. So, this does work. I'm not timing speed because I'm not doing speed, and I don't do speed ever, full stop. Yep. This is my first design. It's rather bad. Allow me to explain. So, essentially, lever flicks on, this gets powered. So remember, the first action we took, always in the sequence, no matter whether it's turning on or whether it's turning off, is to retract this block, which is either the oak log or, in the other case, the crafting table. So in order to do that, we just have the observer, which will trigger every time that turns on or off. So yeah, when it turns on or off, and the first thing it'll do immediately with only the observed delay will be to power this piston, to retract that with a 1 tick pulse, because of course that is how long the pulse from an observer is. But then what we also do immediately after that is only on the rising edge, which is when it's turning on, and this is a simple detector for that. Then this piston will then extend after some delay for that piston to fully retract. After that powers, there is then, still on the rising edge, it does go around and power this with a 1 tick pulse to ensure that it is pushed and left up there. However, when this is turning off, so it's currently on and all of that has been executed, first of all, again, the observer will trigger when we turn it off, which will cause that to retract. But then in the same time, this is going to start to retract, and the observer will then emit a pulse there that will pulse that repeater, which is long enough such that that piston doesn't muck about, and then that will push the wood into place, and then again after 4 ticks of delay, this will be powered, and then that'll be powered, which means that that'll be powered with a 1 tick pulse, and the wood will be put back. So if I do demonstrate, the wood will be put back. So this was my first design. So now I'm going to get into compaction. So you can see this first design has quite a lot jutting out from the 5x5 grid, which I randomly chose. But I decided that the first thing that I could easily fix is this redstone line. I simply moved it under. So this does increase the footprint, but it is a little prettier. So this is my second iteration. I didn't make any drastic changes. The next thing that I wanted to focus on was this rising edge part. Now this was slightly more complicated to implement, because this was in the way. So first of all, I had to move this entire observer thing over a bit. And I have done this in a rather creative method. So I've moved the observer from here down to there, and that has made space for shifting this entire thing to the left. So this now literally just that trap does on and off the same as the redstone dust, and the observer still notices that and powers the piston. That dust is also unnecessary. This version does work. So that has left room essentially that has just left room to move this entire section just a block to the left. That repeater, so this repeater has been moved to just make that 4 ticks. that hasn't really impacted it much, but that is a change that was made. We also slightly tidied up these repeaters here. For whatever reason they were slightly questionable, and they did also move along one. Okay, then in the final iteration we made quite a few changes all at once because I didn't remember to make a clone. So essentially what I've tried to focus on then is this final edge. But in order to do that first, we once again must move the observer circuit out of the way. So for doing that, I have essentially moved this trapdoor and observer over a bit. Oh, well, down a bit. Down and over a bit. So it is the same circuit, but now the observer powers this dust, which powers this block, which powers the piston. However, now this time, we've got an interesting circuit on the left side, which is a different version of the falling edge detector. So essentially, this is quite cool, so I have taken it out. It does work exactly the same way. When the observer goes out, which is on the rising edge, then it powers this block, which doesn't do anything. But when the observer comes back in, then it does power this block, which powers the rest and which powers the piston. Which is rather cool. However, this has now meant, and there's no way for us to power from here to this piston here. So we've changed it. Remember how the sequence always ended in the extension as well? That has also happened here, but that has just happened after a 7-tick delay. 7? Can I count? 5 redstone tick delay. So that does just happen after a 5 redstone tick delay from the first extension, because the piston extension should take the same amount of time. Which I do believe it does because of the piston and observer delay. Fantastic. So this is the final design. It is very compact. Yeah, I might show some footage of me making it now. And I can say that I may have been a bit silly for parts of this making. And accidentally, well, not accidentally, but not realise that I do not also need to move this piston. So at some point, my layout was embarrassingly much worse, being this, which is, yeah, awkward. But I did notice that eventually. So, yep, cool. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things, and thank you. Au revoir.